for power distribution companies in the capital. The Supreme Court has directed for the liquidation of regulatory assets, potentially paving the way for price hikes. Ashmit is here to tell us more on that. Ashmit.
Well, a landmark judgment coming in from the Supreme Court to have sweeping impact across a trifecta of stakeholders. That's the discoms, the consumers, as well as the state governments. For Delhi Discoms, a big win for them, a 27,000 crore rupee win for them. And for consumers, they could potentially be looking at, after the Supreme Court judgment, crawling up power tariffs or a bigger subsidy bill for the state governments. So this entire issue began with the Delhi Discoms raising the issue of regulatory assets in the Supreme Court. Regulatory assets, roughly speaking, loosely speaking, the difference between the cost of procuring the power and the realization from the customers. There's been a shortfall over the last very many years. These regulatory assets have added up to over 27,000 crore rupees in the books of these Delhi Discoms, and that is the issue that was raised before the Supreme Court. Now, the court came down very heavily on these regulatory assets, calling it a case of regulatory failure. Strong language being used there. And to that end, the Supreme Court directing that these power tariffs that are charged to the end consumers, such as you and I, needs to be cost reflective. So this is the guidance that has come from the Supreme Court. But importantly, the direction that has come is for liquidation of these regulatory assets. That needs to be done within a 4-year period. The clear mandate that has been given by the Supreme Court to the state regulatory commissions, they need to come out with a roadmap to liquidate these assets, regulatory assets, within a 4-year period. Now, how is liquidation done? Well, it is usually done by either increasing the power tariffs charged to consumers or by allowing the state government to foot a larger subsidy bill. One of two options needs to be considered, if not others. But broadly, that's the takeaway that the Supreme Court has given. Regulatory assets, that policy needs to be done away with. Only in exceptional circumstances it can be allowed. And then the ones that have accumulated so far needs to be liquidated. So for the discoms, a big win coming in for them. For consumers, they could potentially be looking at increased power rates. And as far as the state governments, they could potentially be looking at bigger subsidy bills. Back to you.
Well, thank you so much for that update, Ashmit. But with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Business Lunch. It's a red-looking screen. Don't go anywhere. Midcap Radar comes up next.